Premed Office Hours, episode 180. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, the co-founder of MAPT, founder of Medical School HQ, author of some books, host of some podcasts, colleague of the great Courtney Lewis, former director of admissions at Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine. Good morning, Courtney.
Good morning. I love the enthusiasm in which you start each of these sessions on a weekly basis. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I heard some suggestion a long time ago that with video you have to be over animated to come across as kind of neutral. So I was like, if it was just a phone call, I'd be like, hey, what's going on, guys? But for video, hey, anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can become as great as you. I'll keep that in mind, and I'll start answering like this.
Yeah, there we go. You just become a little caricature of yourself to come across, to be engaging.
It's fun. It's fun.
We are the Medical School HQ Advising Team. We're part of the advising team. And we help students every day achieve their dream of getting into med school, helping them with essays and interview prep and just general pre-med advising. We do pre-med pathway now, which helps students kind of either supplement the advisor at their school or be an advisor for them in undergrad if they don't have an advisor at their institution. So if you're looking for some one-on-one help, go to medicalschoolhq.net/advising. That's the pre-med pathway link you can check out as well. And yeah, we'll help you. This hour that we're here is free pre-med advising. If you go to premed.tv, that's typically where we take your questions to answer them here on the podcast or live stream or whatever you want to call whatever we're doing here. Courtney, we're ramping up for next application cycle.
Yeah.
The application cycle for 2025, we typically call it because that's when students are starting med school. So it's the 2025 cycle, which starts in 2024. What should students be doing now? It's January 10th. Application cycles open in May. What should students be doing now?
Now is the perfect time to start kind of organizing and collecting all of your data, building a med school list, getting some drafts down of your personal statements, and starting to kind of work on that. Just because it usually takes multiple iterations of your personal statement. It's not a one and done type situation for, I think, just about everybody. So working on that would be smart, and then building the med school list. That's helpful because if you come across, a top choice school of yours and they're really vocal about having kind of a niche and you don't have any prior experience in kind of serving that niche or anything where you could be a good fit for that school, then you still have a couple of months to kind of fill that gap. So there's lots of things like that you can kind of be working on that I know we cover with our students in academy or on one-on-one, where we're getting a really comprehensive look at what's coming up and how to effectively use these next few months.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So mapped.com is a great resource to use right now. You can go in, put all of your courses in, all of your activities, start to get an idea of everything laid out in front of you. You can start to gather your letters of recommendations right inside of Mapped. That's part of our Mapped Pro, which is our paid level. The majority of Mapped is free. You can go create an account and track your GPA and all that stuff for free forever. But with Mapped Pro, you can chat with our advisors. You can go and say, hey, Mapped team, which is the same as the Medical School HQ team. I put in my grades. I put in my activities. I'm concerned about X, Y, or Z. We can take a look at that. And so go check out Mapped. Again, for letters of recommendations, as part of Mapped Pro, you get access to what we call My LORs, where you can write a request to Professor Smith and Dr. Johnson and say, hey, I would like a letter of recommendation from you. They will say yes or no. They submit directly to My LORs. You can start collecting those letters today, which you can't do if you're uploading directly to the application services. So it's a good way for you to start collecting those so you don't have to stress about them later. And we QA them, so we make sure that it has a letterhead and a signature and a date and the name is correct, all of that good stuff. And then we'll send it to the application services later. The one caveat with My LORs is we can't send it to TMDSAS. So if you're applying to the crazy state of Texas, go use something else.
Yeah. I'm not sure how many people understand that all of these application components and all of this prep work that we talk about, you don't have access to the actual application until it opens. So if you don't know what it looks like, what the sections are, how to plug stuff in, what little pieces of data you're going to need, or dates or hours and stuff like that, that's where Mapped comes in and can be very helpful, because it collects and you can log that data. It's the application ahead of the actual application opening. So it will tip you off to some of the information that you're gonna need if you haven't actually been in an active cycle before. There's gonna be a lot of sections that maybe you're not anticipating that you're gonna have to fill out. So
yeah,
check that out.
Yeah, check it out. All right, let's answer some questions. Let's do what we love to do here. Again, go to premed.tv. That's our YouTube channel to ask your questions. First question here from Brandon. Let me zoom my screen in because it is small. My vision is slipping, even though I don't use glasses yet. I can tell my vision's starting to go. Brandon asks, my school has a rule when you retake a class, the new grade counts towards your GPA and the old one does not. Love this question. Will this translate to the science GPA on AMCAS or GPA in general on any of the application services? Courtney, there used to be a different answer in the DO world, and now it's the same answer as all of the other application services.
Yeah, so across all of the platforms, no matter what school you're applying to, both grades will count. So it's going to take the old grade and the new grade. Both will be worked into your GPA. There's no replacement. So pretty straightforward. Both count.
Both count. Yeah, so simple math, right? You take the average of the two if you want to think about it that way. But ultimately, the easiest way to think about it is what Courtney just said, both count. You put the first grade, you put the second grade. The DO application many years ago at this point did have where you would replace the old grade with the newest grade, even if the newest grade was less than the old grade. It's whatever the newest grade was. The DO application would take that into account. They stopped that many years ago. And so every grade counts no matter what your institution does. Even if that grade is no longer on your transcript, you have to put it on your medical school application. And there are ways for them to know what you've been doing. So just like Santa Claus, he will check that list, making sure you're doing everything appropriately.
Cut people doing plenty of stuff. Don't do it. It rules you out forever.
Yeah.
We can catch you. Don't do it.
Don't be like Leonardo. Catch me if you can.
Yeah.
Cool. Good question, Brandon. Abongwe. Hello. Which med schools do you recommend I apply to as an international student? I'm going to guess Nigerian because Nigerians have the coolest names. I have completed my undergrad in the U.S. So again, Courtney, this comes up all the time. International students. To me, one of the biggest disadvantages of being an international student is just they're maybe it's a quarter of the schools actually accept international students, and the rest just flat out don't. So in terms of the number of schools that a student can apply to, an international student, it's just far, far, far less.
Yeah.
The common question is, instead of which med schools, I'm going to change this question here because you just have to go look and see what med schools accept international students or not. There's a good resource I would recommend, f1doctor.com, I believe it is. I don't think it has an S. I think it's just F1 Doctor. Let me double check. f1doctor.com. Yes, f1doctor.com. It's very confusing because the name of the organization is F1 Doctors, but it's f1doctor.com. Go check them out. They probably have a list of international students. I should see if I can steal that from them. f1doctors.com actually works as well. I think I actually own f1doctors.com and I redirect it for them because that's what I do. Go check them out, f1doctors.com, and they'll probably have a list. But Courtney, the bigger question that typically is asked here is, what do I need to do to stand out as an international student? Because there's an automatic assumption that as an international student, I am I need to be better than everyone else. What's your thought process there?
I don't know. I mean, maybe I've read some things a little bit differently. I know, at least when I look at like MD, PhD programs, especially for international, they do have higher stat requirements and kind of put additional stipulations. So I'm actually going to put it back to you and see what you've read, because most of the time, you know, with so few schools accepting it, I don't know if there's anything that in addition outside of MD, PhD.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, I think it's the same, right? It's just be a good student. Obviously,
Yeah.
MCAT and GPA are important. I wouldn't say they're necessarily more important as an international student. I think the biggest thing is going to be, number one, finances, because a lot of medical schools are going to want to put a lot of your money or your family's money into an escrow account, basically guaranteeing that you have the money to pay for medical school, because you're not eligible for federal loans
Federal.
in the States
Mhm.
as an international student. There are opportunities to have kind of co-signing private loans, which you typically don't want to do. So I think just you just be a good student and apply to the schools that you can apply to, that you're eligible to apply to, and cross your fingers. But yeah, all the normal stuff that we talk about in terms of being a competitive student, being a good student, apply to international
Yeah.
students.
Well, and I will say the thing that's standing out within this prompt, that's really working in your favor, is that you've completed an undergrad within the US. Usually the discussion I heard is when transcripts have to go through a WES evaluation and they don't know the equivalency. I know a lot of faculty would at least want to see your core prereqs taken within the US. And so at least you don't have to go and kind of take additional coursework or anything like that. You already have a degree from a US based accredited institution. So it really does help, actually, when you get up to the AdCom level of discussions, just for them knowing kind of the aptitudes, the grade equivalency, and not having to look through kind of an evaluation done. So
Yeah,
I think that's really
100%.
good.
That
Yeah.
helps. Yeah, it's even the opposite for, or I guess it's the same for U.S. citizens, right? Not an international student, but U.S. citizens who go internationally for undergrad. I'm like, no,
Oh, yeah.
don't do
Don't do
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
outside of Canada, Canada is considered U.S. equivalent. So, good question. Rania, starting to lose hope as far as getting an interview invite. Any advice? So we do have a specific kind of call coaching session.
Mhm.
You can use just the general kind of 30-minute or 60-minute call with one of our advisors. We do have an application renovation type session, which is the same. It's just easier for us to understand what you're looking for when you come into it.
Mhm.
Um, the the biggest question, Rania, is what kind of self-reflection have you done? And this is where I wish we could bring students on. Rania, if you can come on, leave a note that says, yeah, I can join you guys. We can send a link to have people join us. We don't use it on Premed office hours. I've used it when I just do kind of solo live streams, but this is where kind of having that conversation, Courtney, with a student, be like,
Mhm.
where do you think you struggled? What was this? What was that? Because that's ultimately where you'll find something. I still probably once or twice a week, I'll review an application of a student, just kind of for fun, just out of the goodness of my heart. I'm like, send me your application. I want to take a look. And
Mhm.
I just reviewed one a couple days ago, and the student had so GPA. The GPA was like 3.46. There was no strong upward trend. It was like 3.6 and then 3.3 and then 3.5 and then 3.4. Something like it wasn't great
Yeah.
trends. 509 MCAT, which was solid. Not
Mhm.
oh my gosh, amazing. Not bad.
Mhm.
But then their main clinical experience started like 2 months before the application cycle opened.
Yeah.
The other clinical experience they had listed was not clinical experience. Everything they talked about was all admin work. And so it's just like, why? I don't know who you are. Like, why are you here? And then I read their personal statement, and the personal statement started all about volunteering in a foreign country as like an English teacher. I'm like, why are you talking about volunteering in a foreign country? Like, sure, you want to help the underserved. That doesn't mean you want to be a doctor. And so just the whole application didn't scream, number one, didn't give me a lot of confidence in their academic ability to complete medical school. And number two, didn't give me a lot of confidence that they really knew why they wanted to be a doctor. So Rania, that could be your case as well. But happy to chat.
I mean, a lot of it comes down to just how you put together your essays. So like they matter so much in, because they're tasked with spending maybe 5 to 10 minutes going through your application, and they're having to make snap judgments and put together a picture. And so narratives matter, and, topics that you select matter. If I'm trying to see if you're passionate about this path and you have a solid foundation upon which we can build, how you present information is crucial. You have to do it in the right way. And so, I mean,
but
hence
Courtney,
our services, but
exactly. So somebody listening to this go, well, of course you're going to say that. You sell services to help students with writing those
but
essays.
I didn't used to.
Yeah, so talk about it. Right, former director of admissions, again, you used to run this whole process. Talk about like what your people were doing with these applications.
Yeah, so I mean, I started ground level as an advisor, and then, kind of escalated until I was director, started some pathways, and then got elected by my fellow deans and directors to be chair of the National Council, or vice chair of the National Council. And so a lot of these discussions are very similar, right? We're looking for kind of qualities that we can glean. We're trying to get a sense of, if there's any resilience or maturity or growth that has happened because you've done an experience. With your personal statement, it needs to stay on topic, right? If I can't follow a timeline or how we got from you saying you wanted to be a doctor to the end, it's a mess, or you're talking about these random stories that I have no idea why they are on your why medicine, why physician personal statement. That's a real problem, because I've seen that people try to start out with some kind of grabby story that's not related to medicine, but they want to highlight a certain quality about themselves or something like that. That's terrible advice. Like, why would you do that? That has nothing to do with why medicine. I want to be able to move through that. And so, we get a fairly comprehensive look based on the data that you give us, but, if we can't also have a narrative that kind of matches that, we want to get to know you and we feel like you have a solid foundation, what's the point? Like, we have 6,000 other candidates who are, could be showing that they are more passionate than you, not by volume or quantity of hours worked, but in how they're relaying their passion for wanting to pursue this path and how they've tried their best to prepare very methodically. And so I don't know, there's, with such high volume, you can be nitpicky, and you want people who really want this. It's a very arduous path that you're about to stick people in. You don't want people who are just gonna say, ooh, this is not what I thought it was gonna be, and either remove themselves from the program. You're down a seat, you're, what's that called? Attrition rate is, percentage is going up, the student's in debt, no one wins. So, hence asking you to do certain experiences, get a knowledge of what it looks like to provide patient care, what a day-to-day in a physician's life could look like, stuff like to kind of mitigate that. But yeah, outside of academics, there is still a lot that goes on. And timing. Timing is another big element. It's not to be taken lightly. So yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
I don't there's a lot. Timing is a big one. I'm trying to create a coupon code here on the fly. The system that we use. I wish it like said, hey, you can use this coupon code for everything, but you have to go and select individual things. So I was just going to show here real quick because it's a little confusing. Let me share my screen. We changed our essay editing kind of packages to make it, I think, easier for students to work with us.
Yeah.
And so if you go to Medical School HQ, so let me just show you just on the main page, if you come up here to the advising tab and then go to essay editing, right? Most of what we do a ton of application cycle advising. You can check that out if you want from A to Z. But if you come here to essay editing and you scroll down, it's very different than what you'll see other companies do in terms of how they operate. You can see here that we now do character-based essay editing. And this is beneficial for a few reasons. Number one, everything that we used to do before was kind of multiple edits. And not everyone wants multiple edits. Sometimes they just want eyes to be laid on it for either final validation, kind of yes, you're good to go, or yeah, let's tear it apart and go, and then I'll see if I need some more essay editing or some more help. And so we have 6,000 characters. That should be good enough for a rough draft of a personal statement, right? All of the personal statements are either 5,000 or 5,300 characters. So you can go over. If you use the coupon code, I was just creating it, and it might not work here immediately, but if you just use the coupon code PMOH for Premed office hours, it'll save you $50 on any of these. And what you can do is up to 6,000 characters, you submit it. One of our advisors will look at it. We don't outsource our essay editing to English majors. It's our pre-med experts that are reviewing these.
It's me.
It's you. Yeah. Get
it's
your
me.
Feedback.
I'm editing
Not the
it.
problem. It's me. Get your feedback and go, okay, great. I'm on the right path. I don't need to see you again. Or, oh, shoot, this is not the feedback I expected. Let me schedule a call. And you can see there is a discounted call available when you sign up as well. But where the benefit comes into as well is for secondary essays. A lot of times students have an issue with one secondary prompt or two secondary prompts. Well, guess what? We have 3,000 character kind of package here where one essay prompt or two essay prompts or 3 or 4 activity descriptions. You really are struggling with 3 or 4 activity descriptions. Those are 700 characters each, 3,000 characters. That's what? 3 or 4 of those that you could submit for feedback. So think about your process, think about where you're struggling, what you really need help with, kind of add up the potential character counts, come purchase one of these packages and go from there. If you're a little bit over, you'll get an email that says, hey, purchase a little bit more or just re-edit and resubmit. So go check those out. It's something new we did this year. It's worked well for our sister company, the PA platform, that they've done the character count based editing for a long time. So we're trying it this year. Seems to be working well.
I feel like it's a deal.
It
if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you know, as somebody who's read literally over 50,000 applications in my career, you know, there's some things once, you know, we see drafts or, you know, things that people submitted, you know, that we can identify fairly quickly. Or you could do a 60-minute where you show us your application, you show us your secondary, we go through it and we talk through it, see if there's anything that we can identify as to why you may have been getting the response that you're getting, what did your timeline look like? What do your secondaries look like? What did the other essays look like? When you did get responses, when were they coming? Because, for me as a prior director, I know the sequencing, even if there's automations. And so that can kind of tip the hand as to what was going on and why you may have heard about it at a certain time. So generally, there's some things that we can figure out and help you avoid them in the future.
Yep.
I love doing that stuff. I love
Awesome.
investigating that stuff. Oh my gosh. Trying to figure out what happened. I love it. Love it.
All right. So that's created that coupon code PMOH for all of the essays. I'll create it as well for kind of single sessions. If you want a single session with an advisor, same coupon code, same discount, $50 off.
And as far as any advice, you just kind of have to wait it out. I know that is super frustrating and can feel really disheartening. Most schools don't want contact. They don't want you pestering them. When they have a change in status or they have information for you, that they'll reach out. So, obviously check your spam folder or your promotions folder just to make sure it's not going there. I know some of mine, because I would bulk send out emails. So if a certain thing on your browser didn't like bulk where it was over 20 people, then it may be kind of changing them. But I would say most pre-meds are aggressively checking all of their inboxes. So I'm not super concerned about that, but it's just a waiting game. And then, if you're thinking, okay, well, this is January, the schools that were my top choice are now kind of completing their interview season for the most part. You'll have to think about reapplication, as much as that is probably very frustrating to think about. If you can give yourself a buffer of these 5 months to not only refresh your application, come up with a new strategy, you also have time to fill in any gaps or kind of missteps, and you have enough time to actually make a difference in those areas ahead of the application opening. So that's what I'd encourage you to do. Wait it out and then try to be really thoughtful about if you have to reapply.
Yeah, and I had a former director of admissions on our podcast a long time ago about reapplicants, and one of the biggest mistakes are students who just kind of knee-jerk go right into the next application cycle, haven't done the sort of reflection or talking to advisors in terms of where their application was lacking, and then they just reapply with the same application, right? Which is like the definition of insanity. Don't do that. Take a break and fix whatever you need to fix. Good luck, Rania. Come hang out with us. Come work with us, and we'll get you going.
Yeah.
Andres, I'm an EMT in an area with a low call volume, 2 to 4 a day. When not on call, I take a clerical role, scheduling supplies, etc. Does mentioning this impact my clinical hours? How to explain in the activity? Courtney, this comes up all the time, specifically the EMT world, where a lot of times you're sitting around waiting for disasters to happen. And students are always wondering, should I count the whole time as clinical? Should I divide up? What should a student do in this situation?
Honestly, my knee-jerk reaction is to say, well, you're on duty, you're on call working a shift, so I would say that it counts. If anything, you can try to parse out, clinical hours, but that seems, I don't know, Ryan. I would say if you're on call and this is your job, and I mean, you can't make somebody call for an emergency service and you have to be available during that time. I would say the hours are there. It's good that you're at least finding something to be busy and do in the meantime. But I would say in other situations, I would want somebody to be very clear. Like if they were an MA, the time that they were actually seeing patients or shadowing a doctor or whatever versus when they were answering phone calls. So maybe some of that, but for on-call type jobs, I feel like it's not at your discretion when the hours are going to be utilized.
Yeah. It's interesting. 99% of the time, I would say it's a clinical job. And even physicians, a lot of what they're doing is clerical stuff, dealing with insurance companies
Right.
and writing notes and doing all this other stuff. And so there's some expectations like, no, like you don't have to spend every waking moment interacting with a patient for it to be counted as clinical. Now,
Yeah.
where I pause a little bit with Andres's question here is the fact that he specifically mentions low call volume and only 2 to 4 a day. Now, I would love to know. So let's assume it's an 8-hour shift, 2 to 4 calls a day. Let's go on the high mark there. So 4 calls a day. Is that 4 hours? Is that 2.5 hours? Like, what does 4 calls a day actually equate to in time? And I would say if there's a big discrepancy, if it's only like 30% of your day is in a clinical kind of setting, I may say let's not be a little overzealous with your clinical hours and maybe downplay some, and then potentially, if you have the room, split it out into the other duties, because there's still some value in what you're doing and you can still show impact there. So that's my one
Yeah.
hesitation is if
Right.
there's a really big discrepancy.
Yeah. Agreed.
Good question. Which master's or SMP programs do you recommend that offer admission to medical schools or at least an interview? Yeah, so kind of the same question that she asked before. You're asking a very specific question. We don't keep lists like this. You have to do your homework. You have to explore. And again, you're going to run into the same issue as an international student. Who's going to accept you and whether or not they accept international students. So same answer. You got to do your work. Mustafa, does our school for undergrad matter for med schools? Courtney, super common question, especially for the pre-med parents out there helping their high school students pick a college. How much does undergrad affect med school admissions?
Not very much. Honestly, I mean, maybe there's a couple of kind of elitist schools that may feel a certain way, but for vast majority, it doesn't matter much. How you did at school will matter much, much more, and what you did with it. So it's a 4-year institution. Great. Did they give numerical grades instead of written feedback for classes? Great. I've seen some weird ones in my day. I don't even know how to evaluate a written non-grade transcript, right? It was so weird.
We
So
do
maybe
not
try to
limit
avoid
students.
those. Yeah, that was a tough one. That was challenging. It was from Washington. So it was in this neck of the woods. I know the university. So outside of that, it's what you make of it, you know. And it's something kind of outside of your control. If like 1 or 2 AdCom members feel a certain way about a university, that's their issue, and you will never know. You will never know. And most of the time that is not the case. As long as it's 4-year institution.
Yeah. So get out of your mind. Like, well, I went to Harvard, and so my 3.4 is basically like a 3.9 from the state school. No, like there's no equations out there.
Even Harvard.
Harvard.
Their transcripts used to bug me because they black out all of the first-year grades. They're blinded. So you have to release those grades or have the registrar release those grades. So like for your Gen Chem and your Bio 1, it was so tedious to deal with those transcripts. And I know. And sometimes honestly, if you go to some of these schools, there may be word on the street that they're kind of inflated. The grades are a little bit inflated because they want their stats to look a certain way. So it doesn't always even work in your favor. So this is something, put it from your mind, go where you need to go to thrive and be successful. That will matter so much more to every university that you're going to be applying to for med school. It's almost a non-issue, I would say.
Yep.
if there's no experiences you can get around that school, maybe think about that. What do you want to be doing with your time, and are there opportunities to do that at your undergrad? If not, go somewhere else.
Go somewhere else. Check it out. Andres again. I took biochem, pass-fail in the fall of 2021 because I got COVID and bombed a test. Is it worth retaking it for a grade this fall as part of my do-it-yourself postbac, or should I just explain my situation in the app? So Courtney, this is pretty straightforward for me. I answered a question recently, very similar question, not pass-fail, but online versus in person. The med school is just going to have their policy, what time period they're accepting pass-fail for prereqs in. And this may or may not work depending on the schools. Should Andres here go and start looking at school lists and building a school list and going, will they accept my pass-fail? Will they not accept my pass-fail? Because it's not a matter of let me argue my case if a school has a policy that they're not going to accept pass-fail outside of the kind of spring 2020, fall 2020 time period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and with this one, biochem is sometimes, or I would say, I don't know, often not a required, but strongly recommended prerequisite course. So in those cases, since it's not required, then no, technically you wouldn't have to retake it because it's not qualifying you for eligibility for admission. It's just an additional helpful course that you have. So is it ideal to have a pass-fail? Not necessarily, but as long as it's not for a required course, kind of neither here nor there. If you have the bandwidth to do it, why not? If you feel like it would be helpful for your science foundation and just your content knowledge in general. Or if you do look at med schools and some of your top choice schools say that biochem is required, then yes, you do have to retake it for a grade. I would say the 2021 is pushing towards the end of when provisions would be in place, and it will be better, especially if you're already kind of in a do-it-yourself postbac, to just take it and not try to fight that battle or get into this gray area. So those are kind of the points that you need to look at. It's not a super straightforward answer. If it's required, I would say retake it. You know.
So I have here the PDF version of the MSAR, which a lot of people don't know about. It's free to check out. So I'm just kind of scrolling through. So you can see here, Charles Drew University of Medicine and Science, they have biochemistry required. This red X for pass-fail. So they will not accept pass-fail. Yeah. When you come up here to CUSM, they have biochemistry recommended. They have pass-fail as a green check mark, but in the additional info, you can see here that they are saying these are the time periods where we will accept online labs and pass-fail. So again, it's going to be very case by case, and it's not going to be, again, one of those things where you can just offer an explanation and hope the med schools will accept that offer. If they accept it, they accept it. If they don't, they won't. So you just have to kind of do your homework.
Yeah, I was always kind of surprised how we would be kind enough to send them an email and say, hey, we need this, and then fight me on it. Who are you fighting?
Yeah.
I've got thousands of other candidates. Like, just give me what's published that I need. I have to hold you accountable just like every other student. If it's published, I'm going to hold you accountable. And
so talk about that, because I think that's the big hang up for students is number one, everyone thinks they're special, right? But the issue is, but can't you understand ... right? And you as a human being can go, sure, I understand.
Yep.
But but I have these published policies. If I don't treat every student the same, I'm opening myself up to a lawsuit. That's ultimately what you're protecting yourself against.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I would always tell my staff when, they were going back and forth with somebody, I never ever wanted to put our jobs in jeopardy because we were making some type of leeway that we shouldn't have been making for a person who was trying to skirt the system.
Yeah.
That was not going to happen. You know, we weren't going to jeopardize our careers for it, and it would be unethical to do for the thousands of other candidates who did go above and beyond to meet those metrics and apply. So you can tell I'm getting all riled up. Like, don't do it. Just put in the work. Don't look for these little nitpicky things or fight it on it. You know, just do it. Just do it. You're going into a competitive program. There's a reason why they want it. They're not going to give you any concessions. Get done what you need to do.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah. And that's not saying, Andreas, that you're not doing that. You're asking a question. I'm getting riled up, but I just it brings back old wounds where it was just so frustrating to have these discussions. Like, who do you think you are? No. And people should be thankful that there are clear delineated lines so everybody is viewed the same. And somebody can't just call and be like, well, but you know, what about this? Or, you know, I had this situation. Okay, well then you can do it. No, everybody needs to have the same standards to measure.
Yep.
So look at the MSAR, look at Choose DO if you need to. But more than likely, it probably will be a strongly recommended course. But there's some.
Kate, is taking care of your sick parents a decent watering event? Good
You tell
question,
me.
Kate. Yeah, so I'll talk about right, this fake made up world that we created in terms of seed and watering event, and in terms of how to explain in your personal statement and potentially your interviews why you want to be a doctor. My standpoint, my kind of general rule is that watering events ideally are not personal stories for yourself or for loved ones, because at the end of the day, the goal is to show that you understand, that you like taking care of someone who is in a hospital, in a clinic setting, in this environment where they need healthcare from someone, and you're taking care of them, and you are showing that you enjoy it. And my general stance is that taking care of a loved one is just different enough that I'm gonna question your goals here. That's not to say that you can't do it. I just always have a little bit of a hesitation around it. So that's my stance. Courtney, seems like you have a potentially different point of view. What is your thought?
Not really. I think I align with you. My thought is I would pose that question right back to you and say, is it? Like, why do you want to tell me that story? Why should it be included on your why medicine? If you can justify it and you have some good reasoning as to how it fits on this journey to medicine and it's important for me to know, sure, I have no problem with that. But if even you're not super sure about it or feeling compelled by it, or it doesn't really serve a purpose in helping me understand how you have come to know that the path towards physician is the one that you want to pursue, then it's just a story. It's just a story. It could be a good story, but I want to know why you're telling me the story. That's what's important. So that's what I would pose back to you.
Yep.
Kind of determine if it needs to be there or it can be there, whether it's decent or not. That's how you write it. But for a topic, what purpose is it serving?
Yep.
I like that we're kind of at the head of another cycle and we're starting to get these questions, right? It's interesting how it all very cyclical. And everything
Just
starts
another rotation
coming
around
back.
the sun.
We start having these same questions. It's fun though. I like it.
Yep. Sticks. Speaking of sun, Sticks Sun 98. What did the best personal statement you've read look like? Also, what is the typical takeaway you have from a quote good personal statement? I love this question. Courtney, can you remember the best personal statement you've ever read?
No.
No, they all blend together.
I mean, I definitely have like a sensory memory of, yes, there were some really powerful ones that were particularly moving, but I think it was in the context of that, the rest of their application, their secondary, and you just feel really strongly about what this person is telling you. So I don't know if there's a particular topic or specific thing that they wrote that I can identify exactly. And again, I've read my fair share, tens of thousands of these things. So, but there are some strategies I would say in place to kind of help the reader get to know you that we kind of talk about, and will be helpful in somebody who's kind of moving through it quickly. And not everything has to be this pivotal moment or an emergency, or I grew up with a terrible childhood or anything. And I don't want to say that lightly, but some of them that I read were not those things, and they were still very strong. So a good personal statement, I would say, I like a clear entry point. Where are we starting this journey? What do I need to know? Kind of a kickoff point. And then from there, how did you grow that, right? What steps did you take? What action items, what experiences can you kind of highlight that will help me understand how you learned, how you grew, how you've come to determine that this is your path? Because at the end of those experiences, ahead of your conclusion, I'd like to already have a sense that you have a pretty solid understanding of what pursuing medicine and becoming a physician is, and I get a sense that you actually want to do it. And then the conclusion is just kind of a wrap up where it just says, aspirationally, now that I know this is my path, here's what I hope to accomplish and do. Um, so that to me makes a good personal statement. If I'm getting into it and I'm like 3 paragraphs down, I'm like, okay, where are we?
What's going on?
I don't have a
Yeah.
sense that this person's really gotten to know what a physician does at all, or what it means to provide
Yeah.
patient care, then that's a problem. Um, so yeah, that would be a good personal statement, is just, in those 3 or 4 kind of paragraphs that they give you, a really clear understanding, entry point, how it's grown, what you explored, why it meant something, what impact it had, and then conclusion is just kind of tacked on. I would say that's a good
Yeah.
personal statement for me.
100% agree. I think students often think, well, I read Dr. Gray's book on writing a personal statement, the Premed Playbook Guide to the Medical School Personal Statement, and all the essays look the same. I'm like, there's a reason why they look the same, right? Yeah, the personal statement has to do its job, and I think at least our philosophy is that the job is to help the reader understand why you want to be a physician, this kind of growth that you've been on to
That's the
experience
whole
this
goal.
world. That's the goal. And so
That's
the
all I
essays are
need.
going to look very similar. And so students will often see that and go, "Ooh, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to write a letter to my younger self." I'm like, don't be different. This is not the time for your creative writing juices to start flowing.
Yeah, no. I will tell you the weirdest one I ever read, because that
That
is
fixed in your head.
burned. That is burned into my brain. It was so inappropriate. This kid wrote, um, it started out by quoting an Eminem song.
You only
The
got one chance.
Yes, the Mom Spaghetti one, and it had the lyrics to it. And then it said, the lights dimmed and I walked out on stage. This was the moment I had been waiting for my entire life, because I was opening for Juicy J. And I was like, what am I reading right now? What am I reading? for those who don't know, Juicy J is like an old rapper. And I will never forget that. It was the weirdest personal statement entry I have ever read, ever. And so don't do that. No. No. But I think a lot of people with the unique element, I get asked that a lot. I got asked that throughout my entire career. And honestly, I can recall 4 or 5 main topics that really kind of kick off this journey. Either I had my own health experience, I had a health experience with a loved one, there was an emergency, I felt helpless, I've always kind of liked science and gravitated towards this, or I saw a physician and it opened the door to this pathway. Like, that's it. They all kind of fit under that vein. So I'm not looking for anything new. Year after year after year, those themes repeat. But what I need to know is, what did your journey look like? How do you understand this? And can I get a sense that you actually want to pursue this? It doesn't need to be this, really unique take on it. I just need to know those things. That's the purpose of the personal statement.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. So this is a perfect time to talk about, kind of as we wrap up here, premedworkshop.com. In an hour and a half or so, I will be doing a workshop all about storytelling and why I think it's so powerful in the medical school application. Not storytelling in terms of creative writing, as we were just talking about, but just storytelling in terms of telling your story and ideally not selling yourself. And I have a great workshop that I've been doing now for a couple of years, talking all about that. So go to premedworkshop.com, register for that. Even if you can't make it live, you'll get the replay. And we will be also kicking off Application Academy for the new cycle. If you've been waiting to sign up for Application Academy, you can do so now. I believe it's open as of right now. Let me just double check. applicationacademy.com.
Some of those workshops that we have coming up, we have a lot of people attending.
Yeah. Yes. So come hang out. Application Academy is open, and we'll get you going. So, all right, Courtney, thanks for hanging out. Another episode of Premed Office Hours in the books. Remember, use that coupon code PMOH to save $50 off any of our essay editing or single session calls.
For a discount on me. Discount on me. Okay.
We'll save some people. Let's reframe it. We're not discounting you. We're saving them money.
I like that. I like that it's accessible. That's a big part of that. So
thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. We'll see you soon. We'll see you next week. Premed Office Hours every Wednesday, almost every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern here at premed.tv. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.